is Terry Bradshaw, quarterback, Pittsburgh Steelers.
It's 7:15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
This is baseball, Major League Baseball. And this is
ABC's Monday Night Baseball, live from Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts.
Looking. He's under the gun. He's fired. He throws. It is.
Welcome to the September 30th, 1974 issue of Sports Illustrated, and that means the September 30th, 2024 episode of the Past Star Prime podcast. I'm Scott Johnston, thrilled to be joined once again. Thrilled might be a bit of an exaggeration, you know.
I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled.
I live tears.
I live to see you guys, man.
But I'm saying when you guys had little daughters, when they see their friends at 5 or 6, they jump into each other's arms.
Yeah, it's like a dog coming
exactly.
home.
Yeah. We don't do that here yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Son of a bitch, get over here.
I'm not as thrilled as Rosie is to see me when I walk through that door.
Yes.
Then again, I'm hoping you guys haven't pissed on the carpet since, since
No,
I've
we
been
did
gone.
know.
We are in Pasadena. I'm sorry, that's Bill Mahoney and Mark Hoffman. We are in Pasadena, California, in the midst of a heat wave. It's about to get toasty here. Hot enough for you guys?
Oh, gosh.
Summer is supposed to be over.
Yeah.
The hottest
and it's getting hotter and hotter and hotter.
The hottest days of the year in Los Angeles are always late August and early September.
Yeah.
I remember I would drag my wife to these UCLA football games, and especially in September, they'd be brutally hot. And one time we parked on top of this building in Pasadena to go to the game, and I swear you the tar was melting on the top.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if I could get the car out.
Yeah.
Well, we found out, and it was sort of a sad thing, that my little daughter, Callie, her legs don't work when it gets hot. That's what she said. My legs don't work. I've got to sit down and have an ice cream. Yeah, it's amazing.
Poor thing.
Yeah, Just
Don't take her to Palm
No,
Springs.
well, we took her to Vegas, and I told her going in, I said, you don't know Vegas heat. She goes, Dad, I'll be fine. I said, no, you don't know. Vegas heat's hot and dry.
Yeah.
It was 109, not an ounce of air. We walk out of the hotel. She goes, can I just go back inside? This is too hot.
Yesterday, I did a 5-mile walk, and you figured that'd be the worst thing in that heat. No, it was cleaning out the garage that just killed me, and I had cover for that.
Right. Well, it all depends. The difference between like doing something at like 7 a.m.
Yes.
and noon is just night and day.
It is.
But I wear a jacket when I do my walk.
Well, you have,
And my wife and daughter look at me like, "What the heck is wrong with you?"
It's just because
I
you
said,
don't want to get the
"It's
sun.
too long to go into the discussion of what's wrong with me."
Yes,
but
that
yeah,
is true.
partly that, and lazy. I'd like to keep stuff in the pocket, and so I use it. So
right.
there are people that are driving around looking at me going, "What the hell is that?"
You're like
guy
the Martin
doing?"
Lawrence of Palisades.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, he doesn't have a jacket on right now, but luckily he does have clothes on.
Yes.
which is-
Yes.
Not
is a
streaking
step up.
today.
Yeah, wait till we get
I
to
got
the
that over
commissioners.
with.
Yeah.
No, that's
I know, right?
Yeah, I'm
No.
training for a half marathon, so I have to run at like 6 in the morning. But no, I get up, man. It's beautiful when I start, and by the time I get home, it's nice and hot.
Yeah.
You
See,
know.
I've never been a get up and go. I always have been.
You do at night though.
8, 9 o'clock at night. Yeah.
But I will tell you, you have gotten me. You've gotten my head because you do a certain amount of steps a day. So now it's in my head. They'll be late at night. I'll be thinking, oh my gosh, I didn't do enough steps. So there I am just walking around the house like I'm some sort of, what the hell are you doing? Callie's like, Dad, why do you keep walking around the house? I'm looking at my watch going, 9,999, whatever, It's
I
at
know.
10,000.
It's crazy. Although the funny thing about a step counter is now when you're like getting groceries out, used to be like, I'm going to carry 18 bags all at once.
Yeah.
Now I'm like 1 bag.
1 bag? Yeah.
2
2
bags.
bags.
30.
No,
Yeah, exactly.
I still try to do them all at once, which is crazy.
All right. So one of the great things about this show is we just have people calling in all the time trying to do ads with us. But I'm sorry, we just don't have time for that right now because
I do not want that money.
Mark insists that we do ads from 50 years ago.
That's right.
That don't pay us a dime.
No. Darrington wants to.
And I have
you
two
know,
ads in this issue,
Oh,
but
wow.
we'll start
So
with
we'll
the
get
first
paid
one.
double nothing.
Double nothing.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, my first ad today is there's an airline that young people may not have heard about, but everyone over 30 has, called TWA. It was one of the biggest airlines in the United States, and now it was absorbed by American, and it's an afterthought. From 1930 to 2001, over 70 years, this was probably one of the biggest airlines in this country.
Yep.
And they've got a great ad of all the airlines in the world, only one can fly you around the U.S. and around the world. Last year, TWA flew over 14 million passengers, 57 cities, American cities, 22 destinations overseas. And
I'm a Pan Am guy, so.
yeah. Yeah, Pan Am, or what's some other defunct airlines?
I think Continental. That was
That
big,
was another
yes.
one. Yes.
airline.
Yes.
I remember Con.
But I don't think most of these, like you said, they don't go out of business. Really, they
No.
get
Merged.
bought up.
Yeah.
And then they just sell
And
their
now
planes
really,
to other places.
You know,
and-
there's only like in America, I guess if you count Spirit, and
Southwest.
Frontier, but Southwest,
Yeah.
American, United, Delta, JetBlue.
yeah, exactly.
Right, that's about it. Okay.
There you go.
All
There's your
right,
flight
there
stuff.
we go. So we got TWA sending us a big check.
Yep,
Thanks,
yep.
Mark. Appreciate
Coming
it.
on, there you
That's
go.
right.
Getting
We're
us some
going
revenue.
back in time.
Yeah.
30 years ago, they were sending a
Yes.
check to us.
Us and Christopher Lloyd. Scorecard. Bill, what you got?
Well, I'm going to go sort of a double one here. I didn't know a lot about, it's Fogallen, right? So
Yes,
yes, coach. I did not realize he was a protege of Dr. James Naismith.
Ah,
I never knew that. And
No.
he said that he had told Fogallen that you don't coach basketball, you just play basketball. And we all know that Allen retired with a record of 771 and 233. He died as part of this issue. But what got me, and this is another thing that doesn't happen nowadays, there used to be a mandatory retirement age of 70.
Mm-hmm.
So he was forced to retire at 70. And then I looked at that, I thought, gosh, that'd be odd because we're all not there yet, but we're getting there. They abolished that in 1978 or 1986. They abolished the whole thing, but I just didn't know that he could have kept coaching.
Wow.
Because didn't Mike Krzyzewski coach into his 70s? Bobby Knight,
when did he die? Do you know?
He died
How old
88.
was he?
88.
Oh,
So I'm
wow.
just saying, Dean Smith, I think, coached late. So John Wooden, how old is he, Mark, when he retired?
Oh, but he retired. He retired in 1975.
Okay.
So I have to do the math. He was mid 60s. You know.
No,
when
I'm
he
just
retired.
saying what a difference our society is, because a lot of times Bill Belichick, you know, if you had to retire at 70, no matter how good you were, it'd be like, yeah,
Right.
but I'm ready to. So I thought that was just interesting in that
Now
way.
back then, I don't know what the life expectancy was. It wasn't. It was probably early 70s.
Yes,
for
or
men
late,
at the
yeah.
time. And now it's a little more. But you're right. I mean, that's crazy. First
Yeah.
of all, why not have the school decide whether or not
That's
the guy
right.
can continue going?
That's right.
I know the FBI. I have a family friend. FBI is 55. For
Is it
ages.
really?
Yeah.
Is it
Well,
really?
that I could understand
Supreme
that.
Court is 110.
Yes.
Yes. And
Or
presidents.
presidents
Well,
forever.
You have to be 80 to run.
You do.
Well, remember,
You do.
65 used to be the normal retirement
Age.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Not anymore.
No, but I'm just it's just odd because we know so many coaches that I don't want to say 70s old because we're all getting there, but you see coaches now, and Pete Carroll, when he coached, looked like he's 72, looked spry and ready to
Yeah,
play.
he still had that energy.
He
Right.
does, you know. So I'm just saying, just to think that here's a guy, he appeared to be on top of his game, but at that age, they just said, well, folk, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate your time.
And he's like, but they said, no, we got to go to the next guy.
Yeah.
The basketball arena at Kansas was named Fog Allen.
That's
I like
right,
to call him
that's
Fog
right.
instead of Fog, but
Yeah.
You
yeah,
just
it's
pissed
named
off
after him.
everybody in Kansas.
Right. All right, Mark, your turn.
Yeah, I've got star of the CFL, George Reed. So a lot of people here probably have no clue who George Reed is.
none.
One of the greatest players in Canadian Football League history. He he was the Grey Cup champion with the Rough Riders. He was with the Saskatchewan Rough Riders. There was a period of time where there were multiple Rough Riders in the CFL.
Yes.
There was Rough Rider one word and Rough Rider two words.
Right.
Which to me is just boggles my mind that they really couldn't come up with a different name. That'd be like, hey, the New York Giants are playing the St. Louis Giants today, and Come on, guys, come on. But anyway, he passed Jim Brown's career rushing mark at the time. He had over 16,000 yards rushing, 134 touchdowns.
Yeah, and you forget, the CFL. I don't know about the rules then, but they only
Didn't they have a wider
They
field?
pumped on 3 down.
And didn't they have
down,
a wider
right?
field?
So
And a
Yes.
little
the running
longer
game was
field?
Longer field.
Longer field, yeah.
In 06, he was voted the best player in CFL history. 2006.
That's crazy. I had never heard of him.
Never I. But you think George Reed, none of us knew anything about him. But in Canada,
Oh, yeah,
he's
probably
huge. You could walk around and say George Reed to someone, like, oh, that guy, man, you didn't see him play. But I'm saying it's just, we obviously know nothing about it, but in his neck of the woods where he was, playing, he was massively big.
Just passed away last October.
Oh, did he really?
Yep.
Wow.
There are signs that some people are carrying conservation too far. So this was back in the day when soda cans were what was called pull tabs.
Yes.
Love those things.
Okay, so that was when you'd open the soda and you'd tear off actually a part of the aluminum.
Yep.
And then it was like, all right, so what do you do with that? And apparently a lot of people would take the pull tab and put it in the hole of the
Right,
soda, right?
right.
I know I did that. I still do that with
Yeah,
the
we do.
ones,
Yeah, we do.
Not the smartest thing in the world, but it was causing all sorts of accidents. They were getting lodged in people's esophaguses. In fact, the accident happens often enough that doctors at a recent X-ray forum listed pull tab ingestion among athletic injuries.
Well, okay,
Yeah,
wait a second.
that's
So you're
smart.
telling me I can understand pulling it off and putting in when you finish your drink. You're telling me you pull it
Yes.
off and you throw it in before you even
Oh,
drink
yes.
That's the best part of
Open
it.
Oh.
it and
Pop
pull
it
in.
in. That's
no,
what I did.
I always threw it in after the fact. Anyone never
What'd you
drinks-
do with it the whole time
Yeah.
you were drinking the soda?
Okay, but if
Did
you
you
want to
put
hear
it in your
stupid,
pocket?
if you want to hear stupid,
Yeah.
one time I took one of the pull tabs off of a tab and I put it in my mouth and I was just playing with it, cut my tongue up,
Oh,
just
for the love
sliced
of
it.
God.
And then I thought I was going to bleed to death because your tongue just.
Mark, like, blood.
I read that it never stops bleeding.
But he would never put it in the
Yeah,
can.
yeah. That's an
Just
idiot.
go right
chew
into
on
the
it.
mouth.
Yeah,
I'll
right, yeah.
chew
Skip the
on it,
middleman.
but I won't put it in the can. That's stupid.
Wow. Never heard that.
Let's move on to They Said It.
Okay.
Go ahead, Billy.
Leonard Gray is a Seattle Supersonics rookie. He was evaluating the talents of 7 foot fellow rookie center Tom Burleson. Well, when everybody else is tired, he's still going to be tall.
Yes.
And we tried to get Tom Burleson on the show. We could have talked to him about that, but we ended up getting Monty Tao, which was absolutely fantastic.
The
But
other
we
end
all
of the
really
spectrum.
went.
Yep.
We went a long way to try to get
we
Burleson.
We went from 7'4" to 5'4".
Yes, we said
We lost 2 feet, but that was about it.
Yep. Great.
Ken Aspromonte, Cleveland Indian manager, giving his phone number to Baltimore newsmen. Don't call me if I'm fired. Let me hear about it on the radio or get it from a newspaper. But that recently happened to Scott Service.
I was just about to say that.
Right?
Already found out.
He got fired from quote unquote one of his best friends.
Yep.
Right? Jerry DePoto.
Yep.
And he heard about it because I think The Athletic or something like that tweeted it. And then
No, it's
the
not been
the
told
organization
officially.
had not
Yeah.
told him that he was being let go. And that's, I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often, but that's really bad form by the Mariners, no question.
Surprising, but such a high end.
Yeah.
Well, you know what?
organization.
It could
we
have
could
been
talk all day about them.
It could have been one of those things. Well, okay, you're going to call and let him know, right? Oh no, I thought you were calling to let him know.
I mean, I'm sure that is what it is, but there's no excuse. You can't. Especially, it's one thing if you're firing a guy because you're like, I'm sick of this guy. They were like, oh, he's the greatest ever. We just need a new voice. We have this long-standing relationship. We're really close. Oh, and I forgot to tell you that we're firing you.
Yeah.
Out one hand and in the other, we are talking regular season football. Finally, Dolphins had opened the season by losing to the Patriots. Now, you got to remember, the Dolphins 2 years earlier had the perfect season. They backed that up with another Super Bowl.
Yep.
And, of course, even back then, we do it now, we did it then. One loss to open the season, and the sky is falling.
Wait till this Sunday.
Right?
If the Jets
yes.
lose, they're done.
Right.
We knew it.
I knew Aaron Rodgers
Yeah.
wasn't going to
Yeah.
make any difference.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's all based on one game.
And if the Panthers win, everyone will go, Bryce Young. That's
Right.
what yeah.
Well, you remember the Cowboys won back-to-back Super Bowls, beating the Buffalo Bills both years in the
Yeah,
early 90s.
yeah.
Well, that second year when Emmitt Smith was holding out, the
That's
Cowboys
right.
started 0-2.
Right.
And everybody was like, oh, it's it. Cowboys are done.
Well, 0-2 is different than 0-1. I mean, I'm not saying teams can't rebound;
Yeah.
they do all the time. But if I were a fan of a Super Bowl contending team and started 0-2, I would even be concerned.
I think back in that day, especially nowadays with 17 games, you do have
You'd
a
have
little more
time.
leeway.
Yeah, because all you got to do is make the playoffs.
Well, remember
Absolutely.
the San Diego Chargers in the 90s
Yeah.
when Stan Humphrey was their quarterback. They
0-4.
started the year 0-4.
That's right, I
and
remember
then
that.
made the playoffs.
I remember that, yeah.
So,
And how'd they do?
well, they didn't go to Super Bowl.
We know that
But
much.
they
So
went to the
they're
Super Bowl
the
once.
Dolphins are 0-1. Now they're going into Buffalo to take on the Bills. Try to go avoid going 0-2. Buffalo helped them out. They fumbled twice inside the 10-yard line. I want to say one was like at the 10 and one was at the 1. So it's 14-3 early Dolphins, and they go on to win it 24-16. But Larry Zonka could be heard coming off the field saying, "I'm glad that's over." So the Dolphins 1-1, but not playing their best football to start the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was just a sense when you won 2 straight Super Bowls and you played in 3 straight Super Bowls, at some point in time, it's hard to maintain. You lose that edge.
Well, we're going to find out this year, aren't we?
Yeah, I just think that there was a sense
I
that
mean, that is
you know,
really the
dynasty
genius
was ending.
of Bill Belichick.
Yes.
Because they
Shula.
not only won 6 Super Bowls, but they lost 3 of the most demoralizing,
Yeah.
heartbreaking Super Bowls. They lose an opportunity to have a perfect season.
Yep.
They lose to the Giants a second time when they should have
Won the game.
won the game. And what was the third one? I don't remember the
Well,
third
they
one.
did. They were helped out by
They got
Pete Carroll.
they got a
because-
gimme in Seattle.
Right. They
Oh,
should have
they
lost
They
got
got
that
a
one.
gimme
one.
in Seattle and the
And they
Falcons.
the Falcons
Yeah,
won. They should
yeah.
have lost that.
28-3 games.
That's right.
So they win a couple of, but I'm just saying when you win one to get
Yes,
back is
yes.
hard, but when you lose one like that, and I mean Belichick used to preach always, that's last year, move on.
Yep.
And somehow he was able to do it.
And didn't they go 9 years at one time, the Patriots, between Super
yeah,
Bowls?
they basically
Yeah.
had 2 dynasties.
Yeah,
but
that's-
Belichick and Brady were part of both.
Yeah,
They're like the only
yeah.
2. Up in the air in the hectic East, Bill, the Cardinals and Pirates battling for the NL East division, and the Cardinals getting help from everyone, including a relief pitcher known as Al Hrabosky, also known as,
The Mad Hungarian.
isn't that's one
That's
of the
the
all-time
best.
great
That's
nicknames.
the best.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It says in the article that Al Hrabosky, whom Torre addresses as the Mad Hungarian or simply Hungo, was Joe Torre had made an error, so it led to a run. So they had to go up to the mound after that, and he was expecting Hrabosky to be just out of control, but he wasn't. He was actually very calm. Al Hrabosky said, after receiving the ball from the catcher, he will turn his back to the hitter, amble off to his spot, and his head bowed, soliloquize his own worthiness. Then, having convinced himself of his preparedness to combat, he will wheel around and stride to the rubber with a rolling, listing gait. He said it's a way to hypnotize himself and get him into that motivation that he's worthy and he can beat you. I had never heard, because Hrabosky always came off, when you saw him, that guy's insane. He was a very deep thinker.
Yeah.
Very deep thinker.
I urge everyone go on YouTube, look up
Yes.
some video of Hrabosky, because you'll never say anything. He's psyching himself
Yes.
up with his back to the hitter.
And then he throw that ball into his
right,
mitt.
and then he throws
like,
it and he turns around like angry, like he's going to storm the
like,
batter.
give me the sign!
Yeah. And he had that,
Yeah.
but he wasn't. And that was, because
Yeah.
as a kid, when you'd see him, you think, man, that guy's, but he wasn't. But I always just thought also that how many people attended that game? Like right now, that'd be 60,000, right? 19,000. It's a different era, man.
They did not draw back then.
No.
Remember, when we were talking about the Dodgers, they averaged like a league high. It was like 27,000.
Yeah.
Wasn't Price. It just hadn't caught on as
No.
being, this can't miss.
It was called America's
entertainment.
pastime, but a lot of people didn't make it there, didn't give them their
Right.
time.
Right.
But that Cardinal team was so fascinating to me because they went 14 games under 500 in July. And then all of a sudden they have this big rush and they get into first place and pass the Pirates, and then they lose 6 in a row. And they ended up, I think, losing by a game and a half to the Pirates in the division.
Yeah.
It was just such an up and down team, which is the beauty of baseball, because no matter how good or bad you are, every team has a streak. The worst team in baseball can get a 5-game winning streak, and the best team in baseball can get a 5-game losing streak. That's just the sport.
Yeah.
And also, a lot of it just depends, as we all know, who gets hot at the end of the year. Diamondbacks were a classic case, of that.
Hrabosky had given up just 1 earned run in his last 41 innings pitched. So whatever he was doing was working at that time. And once again, this is back in the day when relief pitchers didn't come in and get 3 outs. They came in and got 6, 8 outs, and then would come back the next day and get 6.
Well, John Montefusco went 9 innings.
Right.
As a relief pitcher.
Yeah.
Jolting the Reds and the NHL, Billy, this was the Soviet Union taking on some North American teams.
But they're taking on the WHA. It was called the Summit Series. They had played them a few years prior in 72, and I think the NHL took that one. But they went against the WHA, but they went against Gordie Howe. Gordie Howe, and there was a bunch of other guys on that team that were excellent. One thing they just said is one of the Russian guys decided to run Gordie Howe into the boards. Gordie Howe was 46 years old. And the way they put it, he massaged him with an elbow. No, Gordie Howe didn't massage anybody. Because remember, we had, Chuck Catane and Catan, and he had said that Gordie Howe did it when he met him. He gave him an elbow. Gordie Howe didn't massage anybody. I get the Russian guy didn't go back near him. The Russian guy was 21 years old.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, if you're 21 and you see a guy like that, if you're playing sports, don't you want to take a run at him? Don't a little bit if you're out there like, that's Gordie Howe. You know who he is.
Well, you do if you're 6'2", 225.
That's right. There you go.
If you're Wayne Gretzky's thing, you're like, hey, you know what? Why don't you take a run at him?
That's right. And getting in those corners with Howe just must have been just deadly. But he massaged him, so he probably wasn't hurt.
Yeah, nice little massage.
Thank you.
And maybe a pedicure.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. There you go, Mr. Young Russian guy. Oh, they called him the Soviets back then.
I don't know,
that's
though.
right. That's right.
A good massage with the elbow is the key.
It is. So you're telling me, Mark, that when he went in and pushed him in the boards, he turned around and Gordie Howe went, stay right there.
The lower back.
Lower, over to the right, over to the right. Oh, yeah, that's perfect.
I feel great.
Yes.
Niet. I got a Russian name word there, see?
Right man in the right place. We move on to our cover story, which is Notre Dame quarterback Tom Clements coming off their national championship season when they beat Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. Clements is back for his senior year and coming off the game against Northwestern, in which he threw for 182 yards, rushed for 44 more in a 49-3 win. Notre Dame 2-0 on the season. He's a leading Heisman candidate, but says of that, I don't want it. I wouldn't feel comfortable about winning it. There are other players who are better than I am that no one ever hears about. I'm just happy to be playing on a great team, and anything but a national championship is irrelevant. I don't like the publicity. I don't care to be singled out. I'd rather go unnoticed.
And get off my yard.
This was a 21, 22-year-old kid, and I can tell you guys that 50 years later, Tom Clements apparently has not changed one bit. We did everything we could to have him as a guest, and they just basically politely said that he does not like to do these kind of things. He didn't like to do that. If you read the quotes in this article, all I kept thinking about was the writer came back and said, well, he said 19 words total. There's a lot of quotes in here about people talking about Tom, but not a whole bunch from Tom. And it just wasn't his personality.
And it's just so different from our nowadays. You think if he had won the Heisman and the commercials they have with the Heisman house, Clement would just be, they could make so much fun with him. But back in the day, man, he'd say nothing.
It's interesting. Clements is a man of few words, yet his backup, who we'll have on here in a few minutes, is a man of many words.
Many, many.
Right. So kind of different. First of all, do you know what TV show that Clement was addicted to?
I do not.
Any idea?
Love Boat.
Bewitched.
I Dream of Jeannie.
Okay, I'll make a game show. It's a game show.
Oh, that's so easy. That was a Liars Club. Joker's Wild.
This Is Your Life.
Most famous game show.
Quiz show.
Jeopardy.
There you
Jeopardy.
go.
Oh, there you go.
Jeopardy.
Wow.
And the other thing I like is they have the picture of all
What
previous...
is Jeopardy?
Yeah,
Yes,
what is
Jeopardy?
Thank you. Good call.
Clements is as cool as they come. As you mentioned, the backup quarterback and friend Frank Alaco, who we'll have on in just a few minutes, said Tommy is so cool that sometimes he seems cold to people who don't really know him. But he just was one of those that led by example.
He just had the athletic skill. He didn't want to be in front of people.
He said of enthusiasm, calmness helps me more than jumping up and down. For one thing, it saves a lot of wear and tear on your body. And he has lots of reasons to jump up and down. A 21-3 record in his 24 starts, including, as I mentioned, the 24-23 upset win over Alabama to win the national championship last year. Bear Bryant says of the quarterback that beat his Crimson Tide, I wouldn't consider Clements a super passer or an outstanding runner, but he makes the right play at the right time, and that makes a winner. Of course, we've all heard of the Sports Illustrated jinx, and Tom Clements was a victim of this. He's on the cover of the September 30th issue that came out on Monday the 30th, right after the game that Notre Dame played against Purdue on September 28th in South Bend, and Purdue beat the Fighting Irish. So he comes out, he's on the cover 2 days later, or 2 days earlier, they had lost to Purdue.
Well, we know he didn't get angry because they said he never did. He was just always like, that's not good. That was probably the most he got.
Yes, we will do better.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, this article starts off with Tom Clements looking to climb Ara Parseghian's new portable coaching tower. And right there with him was Frank Alacco, the backup QB for Notre Dame. That was a role Frank had the duration of his time at Notre Dame. And if we're being honest, we tried to get the recalcitrant Clements for this show. And when we couldn't make that happen, we too went with the backup. But when you hear from Coach Alacco, you realize he is nobody's backup. He, like all of us, just was waiting for the opportunity to come. And sometimes that opportunity isn't what you wanted or expected, but it's an opportunity nonetheless. I say Coach Alacco because Frank became a high school basketball coach, one of the most successful ones in California history, first at Northgate High School, then at De La Salle High School in Concord, California. Coach Alacco was the 27th coach in state history to win 600 games, reached that milestone faster than any coach in the history of California. He ended his 24-year high school career second all-time in winning percentage and is the only coach in Cal State history to win a state championship at two different schools. Frank, that was the longest introduction I've ever given, I think. So, thank you so much for joining us today on the Past Our Prime podcast.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm really looking forward to this.
So let's start with your time back at Notre Dame 50 years ago. Tell me about our cover man, Tom Clements, the quarterback, and your teammate. From what I've read about him, being on the cover of SI probably wasn't that big a deal to Tom, was it?
No. Tom was always a very calm and cool guy. I used to call him Mr. Spock. I said, you have no feelings, no emotions, but he just never got rattled at all. I can remember, before the national championship game, we roomed together on the road. And I was always have been a rah-rah guy, as evidenced by my coaching career, right? And I was always a motivator. And I'm in there telling Tommy, if we win tonight, it's going to be the greatest, we're going to be national champs. It's something we can be for the rest of our lives, and we'll have national championship rings. And I'm going on. And he's just listening. And then he turns to me and says, hey, if we win, you and I are going out to Bourbon Street and we're going to have a great time. And if we lose, we're going out to Bourbon Street. And we're going to make a difference for me. And that really was the way he was. He was just unflappable under pressure, and one of the greatest quarterbacks in Notre Dame history. We ran the wing T, so the statistics that Tommy had certainly don't measure up to some of the other legends of Notre Dame. But when you come down to competing and winning and leadership, he was really very, very special.
And being unflappable, I mean, that is a great trait in a quarterback.
Yeah, I think he always had this demeanor in the huddle that people just responded to him. I remember his, freshman year, we were not eligible. We were the last, class in the NCAA history that wasn't allowed to play varsity. So we all played on the freshman team, which meant we played about 4 games, Michigan State, a couple of others. And our job was to be cannon fodder, for the varsity. And Tommy, went through that whole year. And then in the spring, he just elevated himself and bypassed some of the experienced veterans that were on the team that were expected to be the starting quarterback. And I think the reaction that he got from the upperclassmen was pretty amazing. They just embraced him right away because of that calm demeanor that he had. You know, he just was able to step in the huddle and do things, and everybody kind of rallied around him. He had this sense, even as a sophomore, that we're going to get it done, you know, just very calmly and coolly, and everybody really responded to that. He was the perfect leader for that particular team.
It seemed that he was just a true team player. They talked to him about winning the Heisman, and he didn't really care about that. He was all about team. How important is it to have your quarterback be that type of guy?
And particularly in that kind of an offense that we ran, the wing T. You know, as a basketball coach, I ran the Princeton offense, and I often say that the wing T is the Princeton offense of football, right? Mm-hmm. It's really team first. It's everyone does their job, a lot of misdirection and counteraction, and Tommy didn't need to put up big numbers. He could run. You know, he was very crafty with the ball. He could throw. He didn't have a cannon. You know, we had guys there like Jim Bolger. You know, we used to call him Bullet Bolger, who had a cannon. You know, he was Mark Bolger's dad, who played in the NFL, and he had an exceptional arm. Tommy never had that kind of an arm, but he could deliver it, a catchable ball, and do it at the right times. And I think he was a good match for Coach Parsegian too, because Coach was really mellow and a mild guy and just a real cerebral thinker. So I think they were the perfect partnership to run that offense. But I do think that offense is a very selfless offense. You know, you might be the guy, Eric Pennick, getting the fake pitch, and then we're going to run that trap play to Wayne Bullock, you know, and the guard's going to make a special block. And that team really was very unique that way. It was a team first team, and I think a lot of that stemmed from Tommy.
What's the mindset that someone needs to have to be a backup quarterback? Is it that every day you assume I'm going to be in the next play? I might have to be in the next play.
You know, it's funny. I only went head to head with Tommy 1 year. You know, he was always with the first group, and you're the backup quarterback. You're always going with the second team against the first team. And when I was a sophomore, I was the third team quarterback. So you're going with the prep team guys against the first and second team. So it's really not a time where you really can shine. And my spring before my senior year, I had an exceptional spring. I really did. I felt I played really, really well. And I remember Coach Parsegian called me in the office before I left. And he said, you know, Frank, you had an incredible spring. He said, you know, if the job was up for grabs, you could have won that job. He said, but it's not up for grabs. You know, he led us to the national championship. He's a Heisman Trophy candidate. And he said, you know, you need to come back in the fall with the mindset that you're going to be the best backup quarterback in America. And if something happens to Tommy, you're going to step in and perform and be ready to do your thing. And so I thought, you know, that Parsegian handled that so well that I accepted that, you know, and I kind of did that with kids that I coach, is just be honest with them and let them know the reality of it. You know, of course, in that day you stayed, you know, a lot of guys would have transferred. I never entered my mind to transfer or leave Notre Dame. I loved that team. I loved Ara. You know, being at Notre Dame was a very special thing for me. So there was no sense other than accepting his challenge to be the best backup quarterback in the country. And I do think if you talk to my teammates, I really didn't have a great career there, you know, but I think I'm very well respected by my teammates because I was a good teammate and I did what needed to be done for the team, whether that was being a great holder on extra points or was it making people laugh in the locker room with my great Bee Gees imitation. So
we're ready for that.
We're ready for the Bee Gees imitation.
I'm ready for that.
What's it like playing football at Notre Dame? Because to me, that's the pinnacle of like just about anything you can think of when it comes to college football.
You know, it really was. And I have to say, Coach Parsegian, I always say he's one of the greatest men to ever live. You know, I have a shrine over here to him in my office that I still think of. And anytime we won a championship coaching, I would always call Coach and I'd say, you won again. And he would laugh and I'd say, Coach, it's everything I've tried to be, was the embodiment of who he was. And I think he embodied the values of Notre Dame. He taught really a spiritual base that there was love and there was loyalty, there was discipline, there was love, there was sacrifice, there were all these things that we really believed in. He got us to believe in. And of course, the tradition of Notre Dame was so special. I can remember walking in the locker room when I was a freshman. I have to admit, I had a really rough freshman year. I struggled. You know, I was an All-American high school quarterback and, you know, broke my collarbone in my first game of my senior year and didn't get to play. You know, I was one of the few people that Notre Dame ever recruited that didn't play their senior year. But when I went to Notre Dame, I was like ninth on the depth chart because I hadn't played. And I worked my way up. There were like 5 quarterbacks on that freshman team. Most of them were moved to other positions. Al Samuels was a running back and Drew Mahalik went to linebacker. And, you know, and I hung in there and I ended up being the number 2 guy, but didn't play a lot. And I can tell you, I was wandering through the locker room one day and I was thinking, and I think maybe I should leave, maybe this isn't the right fit for me. And I stumbled upon this plaque. Now, back then, we had the old Notre Dame locker room my freshman year. They redid it the next year. But my freshman year, we had the old Rockne locker room. And I was walking through the lockers and I saw this plaque in the back and said, I've got to go Rock, but I'm not afraid. But one time when the boys are down, the breaks are beating them, ask them to go out and win just one for the Gipper. I don't know where I'll be, but wherever I am, I'll know and I'll be happy. And I saw that plaque and I got chills and I just said, where am I going? This is the perfect spot for me. And I think that team really embraced it. Today with the NIL and a lot of things, I don't know that people have that loyalty and their love for the university, but I can tell you my teammates did. We really played for each other. We played for for the Golden Dome, and for everything that we tried to represent. And of course, it was easy to do that because Ara was the model of decorum. He always handled himself so professionally, so dignified. And I think that really funneled down to all of us that tried to be like him.
You just sort of touched on it. You broke your collarbone in high school. Then you went into Notre Dame and things were looking good. You got hurt again. I know you love the university, but what made you keep going? Why is it? Because a lot of people just say, man, another thing happened to me. What made you keep going?
Coach Parsegian once said to us at the Orange Bowl, we lost 40-6. It was one of the worst losses in Notre Dame history. And Ara walked in the locker room and he just said, gentlemen, I want you to remember this as long as you live. Adversity has the effect of eliciting talents which under prosperous conditions might have remained dormant. And walked out of the room. And we were left to remember that adversity has the effect of eliciting talents which under prosperous conditions might have remained dormant. And that became our battle cry. And from an 8-3 season ending in a disastrous loss in the Orange Bowl, we did dig deep inside of ourselves to find, what we didn't even know we had. And that next year we go 11-0. And those words of Ara always stuck with me. And even as a coach, I preached that. I think anybody that ever played for me can quote that because we lived it. And I just felt like all of the adversity that I faced just made me a better man. Obviously, it was disappointing, to work that hard and to wait that long. And I remember my fifth year, I would sometimes drive home from spring practice and I'd be honking the horn. Just I was so happy, that I finally got to achieve the dream that I had since I was in seventh grade. And then to get hurt, I remember the trainer came out and I just said all the work I did, for this. And I tried to come back and obviously didn't make it back. But I struggled, to be honest with you, to see guys like Joe Montana, who, that injury gave him an opportunity to move up on that depth chart and to look at the history they had. It was a real battle for me to deal with that, until my late 20s when I really came to realize that, my calling was a different calling. My calling was to be an extension of Coach Parsegian and go out and spread the word, and get kids to believe and, not to give myself any credit, but I always said, I'm John the Baptist. It's my way to prepare the way for other people to be successful. But yeah, I had my times when it was frustrating. I remember the first game at Boston College when I wasn't starting my fifth year and I was crying, on the sideline there when they did the Star Spangled Banner. But in retrospect, all those things were good things, and I actually wouldn't have had it any other way. My younger brother was a running back at Notre Dame. He was the number one running back in the country in 1973. He was a parade All-American, and he never played at Notre Dame. He had tore his hamstring twice, very well respected by his teammates, but never got the opportunity to play. And I asked him about a month ago, I said, Rich, if you knew, his 5 official visits were Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Nebraska, and Notre Dame, and he goes to Notre Dame, and he said he knew he made a mistake football-wise the first time he broke a huddle and he got into a 3-point stance and he looked up and he said, I couldn't see anything. He was a tailback. And all those other schools were tailback schools, and he said, I didn't have any vision. And he said, I was never quite the runner that I was coming out of a stance and then, snapping his hamstring twice. But I asked him, I said, if you knew that you were going to go to Notre Dame and not play, would you go? And he said, absolutely. For what we got from our teammates and what we learned from, I was there think of this, we were there with Father Hesburgh, Moose Krause, Ara Parsegian, Ted Hesburgh. It was just an amazing time. We were around such incredible leaders. I don't want to get corny, but really, I got Father Hesburgh over here too. These guys shaped my life, and what a blessing. And to trivialize that experience by, diminishing it because I didn't play, it doesn't cross my mind anymore, quite frankly.
You also, there was also one other gentleman in your life. Maybe, tell us a little about Harry Davis and what he meant to you.
Wow.
And how he changed your life.
Yeah, well, Harry Davis was a gentleman. Again, I always believe that God has a plan and he brings everyone into your life for a reason. We're supposed to be here today. We're going to get something out of each other today. It's just the way it is. And when I was starting quarterback, in January and February and March, I used to go to church every morning to just say thank you to God for, giving me the opportunity to be the quarterback. And one time I, walked into the church and there was an older man that came in right before the communion, and he was sitting in front of me, and he kept rubbing his hands, and honestly, his tears were frozen on his face, and I couldn't wait to talk to this guy. It reminded me of my grandfather, who I'm named after, and waited till mass was over, and I went up to him and started talking to him, and he asked him where he was and what happened. He was late, coming to church, and he said he rode his bike to church every day, and so we just started talking, and so we started sitting together every day at mass. And then one day I asked him what he did after mass. He said he goes to visit his wife at the cemetery. And I said, well, how long does that take you? He goes, oh, about 5 hours. And I said, 5 hours? Where is she? And she was buried where Knute Rockne was buried. In fact, wow. He showed me the real grave that Knute Rockne, not the tourist grave, the real one, which I have visited every year ever since that. But, Harry used to ride his bike, and he would say he'd ride his bike Highway 31, and the trucks would come by and they would splash snow on him and knock him over. And he would get back up. He's about 86 years old. And so I said, I don't have a class till 10. How about if I take you to the cemetery? So I began taking him to the cemetery, and I would sit and just watch him. And he would wipe off her grave and wipe the snow off, and he would kneel in front of it. And then as we became better friends, he trusted me, and I would go with him, and we would do this ritual together. And we became the best of friends. And I never told him that I was the quarterback at Notre Dame. And he would have been impressed. I mean, he was a Notre Dame guy. He said he built Knute Rockne's house. And when I separated my shoulder, I was actually being wheeled into surgery. And this priest from the church came over to bless me. And he looked at me and he said, "You're Harry Davis's friend." And yeah. Did he know you were the Notre Dame quarterback? And I said, no. I said, that had nothing to do with our friendship. And I just remember that was the last thing that was said. And after my surgery, I went back to see Harry at his house, and he had failed dramatically, probably dementia, didn't undiagnosed at that time, but he really didn't quite know who I was. And I remember I gave him a sweater when I left because I was going back home. And I gave him a sweater. And I always say that the warmth my sweater gave never was enough for the warmth he gave me, because he really taught me about love. I mean, I couldn't believe how someone could love someone that much, to honor her every single day, to go and kneel at her gravesite. It was really a very cool thing. And I always look at him as an angel that was sent with me to teach me that particular lesson.
Coach, you just are, it's a great example of, you just never know, if you close doors that are open to you, you never know who might make an impact on your life. Because by all accounts, this guy should have just been a stranger on the side of the road, and look at what he did. And therefore, the impact he had on you, that then you were able to transfer on. And it's just, you pay it forward when you meet special people.
It's true. I've run a basketball camp for 44 years back in New Jersey, at my hometown. And the reason I did that is when I left New Jersey, my high school coach was devastated. And he came up to me and he said, "You need to promise me that you will always be a part of this community." And I didn't know how I was going to do that. And what I did was I started a basketball camp, and I am a part of that community. I'm still very active in New Providence, New Jersey. And this year at camp, I told this story, and just about what you just said, Scott. I said, you never know the experiences in your life and how they will turn out. Sometimes they're devastatingly cruel to you, but then you look back and they provided a different door for you. And the story I told, and I had never told the story before, it just popped in my head as I was talking to the kids. I played Pop Warner football in New Jersey since I was third grade. I was the quarterback. And here I was going into 8th grade, and I was, the quarterback. I was the man, and played in a great Pop Warner. And then 8th grade came. And we had a great coach, Lou Panino, and his assistant coach, Mr. Larry Fabrizio, excuse me. And a new coach moved into town. And he was really knowledgeable and a very good coach. He was going to be our offensive coordinator. One little problem, he wanted his son to be the quarterback. But I had been the quarterback for 5 years, and it was going to be hard to move me out, right? And so one day, my brother Michael, who ended up being a phenomenal college player. Actually, he was drafted in the NBA by the Baltimore Bullets. Michael called me and he said, Frank, we're at my friend's house and we're going to go play basketball in Newark, New Jersey. We need a guy. You can play against high school and college kids. I'm in 8th grade and I'm becoming a really good basketball player. This is great. I'm going to do this. So I called the football coach and said I was sick and I wasn't going to go to practice. And sure enough, I went to play basketball with my brother, had a wonderful time. The next day I went back and I was a halfback. And I was an awful halfback, I have to tell you. I wasn't very fast and I really wasn't very shifty. And I went home and I told my dad, I said, Dad, I'm going to quit football. And he said, why? I said, well, they moved me to halfback. I'm not a halfback. I said, Dad, I don't even like football. I like being quarterback. I like leading and I like that particular, the cerebral end of it. And my dad said, well, you can't quit. You know, you started it, you got to finish it. So I went to the sporting goods store and I bought forearm pads. I don't know if you remember those, but
Yeah.
I put one from my ankle to my knees on both legs, and I put them from here to here. I was going to get through that year. My goal was I'm not getting hurt. I'm not getting hurt, right? And so I went through that whole year, and I decided, you know, I got through it, and I was so thrilled when the season was over. Told my dad, I'm never playing football again. I'm going to concentrate on basketball. That summer, I was running every day, you know, and my friend Chico Policino would ride his bike and I would run next to him through the hills of where we lived in Chatham and New Providence. And one day, it was August 5th, to be honest with you, I sat in front of I was parked in front of his house and we were drinking water and I said, I'm going out for football. And he said, what? You haven't done anything all summer. I said, I got to go out for football. And I went home and I talked to my dad. I said, Dad, I'm going to play football. And he said, what? You said you're never playing football again. I said, Dad, I can't go through the rest of my life having that kid and his father think he was better than me. I've got to improve this. And so I called the high school coach, Don Carpenter, and started going up to his community pool. And he was working with me, showing me the throws and steps and all that. And 3 weeks later, I went to freshman football practice and I was the quarterback and he got moved to halfback, right?
Great.
And at that time, I was really bitter about that, right? And looking back, if that guy didn't do that, I never would have gone to Notre Dame. You know, that him challenging me like that, I never would have played football. I was done. I was a basketball player. So I look back at that and think at that time, I was angry and upset and frustrated with the way I was treated. But yet that was a blessing. That was the best thing that guy ever did to me. He changed my life. So, you know, I have nothing but honor for that guy. Appreciate what he did to me.
One guy who played even less than you on that 1975 team was Rudy Rudiger. What was he like? And did you even know that he was on the team?
Oh yeah, Rudy and I were actually very good friends. Rudy would tell you I was kind of a mentor to him. You know, he was there. The thing I admire about Rudy. I mean, that guy, he was small, you know, and he was playing defensive end, and man, he got beat up every day and just kept coming back for more and more, you know. And he was a popular guy in the team. The guys liked him. He lived in the ACC, the basketball center, so he had a room in the back. So that was a gathering place for a lot of guys. But yeah, I remember Rudy very well. He used to come to my apartment. We hung out quite a bit. And then, of course, you know, as fate would have it, right? He got a break and got that opportunity and seized it and became a legend. But I'll tell you, there's two things I remember about him. One, he might have been one of the toughest kids I've ever seen because he was getting beat up by guys 6'5", 270, and he was barely 200 pounds, if that. I don't think he was that. But he also fought in the Bengal bouts. The Bengal bouts was this boxing thing, like the Golden Gloves that Notre Dame does every year, and the proceeds go to Bangladesh. And it's really an amazing thing. These guys train all year, and then they do these fights. I remember Ken McAfee fought Ross Browner my senior year. It was an unbelievable fight. But the best fight I've ever seen in my life was Tom Bake and Rudy Rudiger. Those guys Tom was a halfback, and they just, you know, just hit it. But I've never seen more punches per second. So Rudy was a very, very tough competitor.
How accurate was the movie, though? Was it accurate at all, or was it a little, you know, Hollywood?
Well, of course, they Hollywooded it to a certain extent to embellish it quite a bit, but you know, the core of the story is true. I mean, he worked hard, he got the opportunity, and he did what he did, and I'll tell you, he was very persistent in that story, in telling the story. You know, I mean, getting that story produced, you know, it was quite a challenge for him because he really pushed a lot of that, and it's a great story and has really inspired a lot of people to do more. So. Great. It's great for Rudy and great for the university.
After being involved in youth camps and the CYO program for over 10 years, you take the hoops job at Northgate High School. You become a high school basketball coach. How did that change your life?
It was one of the greatest decisions I've ever made in my life. I actually wanted to coach at Clayton Valley High School, which I always liked Clayton Valley. Ironically, my son's the head coach at Clayton Valley now, and I always wanted to coach at Clayton Valley for some reason. And the job came open. They had a longtime coach, Bruce Iverson, who was a terrific coach, and he left after 25 years, I think. And so I applied, and they said no, we were going to hire the JV coach, and I didn't want to be an assistant at that time. And so I was running my camps at Mount Diablo High School, and the athletic director said to me, "You should apply for the Northgate job." And I really wasn't going to do that. And my wife really pushed me. She said, "You've already made the decision to, you made the decision to coach high school. Why wouldn't you take Northgate job?" And so I applied, and man, I was a finalist with 5 guys, and 4 of them had won 20 games the year before. I didn't expect to get the job. I really didn't, because I had, limited experience, 17 years coaching youth basketball. But they hired me, and when Bob Johnson, the AD, called me to tell me I had the job, I said, I really have to discuss this with my wife. He said, "What, you didn't do that already?" I said, "No, I didn't think you'd hire me. I mean, I have no experience at this, but I went in, and the first thing I did, Scott, is I went back to Notre Dame. And I just, I tried to recapture the tradition, the Tom Dooley letter at the grotto, the letter by the lake at, by the log cabin church, the signs in the locker room. And I just brought it to Northgate. I remember we had a sign, "Frank Alaco, your number is 14, make Northgate number 1 when you leave here. That will be remembered." We had the "Play like a champion" sign. We had this tradition, the Phantom, that one of our coaches would write this motivational letter for us every Thursday, and it would be in the locker at Notre Dame, and nobody ever knew the Phantom was. We figured it out afterward, but nobody knew at the time. And I started the Phantom. My brother Jerry was writing letters, and I would put them in the lockers. So I just made it just like Notre Dame. And when I went to De La Salle, it was even easier. Because it was a Catholic school, and we could integrate spirituality into it. We had regular chapel services on Friday nights where we got kids together and they got to talk and communicate. And so it just became the embodiment of everything that I learned at Notre Dame. But it was a great part of my life. I'm a big believer that, your life goes in stages. It was my role to be a backup quarterback. It was my role to go and be a youth basketball coach and start a basketball camp. I probably wouldn't have done that if I was coaching high school basketball. Then the high school routine. And then when it came time, I got the opportunity to go to USF as the associate head coach, and I wasn't going to go. Rex Walters offered me the job, and I took it, and thinking Rex said he was going to go to the NBA and I would get the job. And unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. When Rex didn't go to the NBA, and I didn't get the job. And then they asked me to stay in administration, and I really thought I had more to do in coaching. And I called my dear friend Bob Ladouceur, the legendary football coach at De La Salle, and I talked to him about it and said, I still feel like I've got something to give to coaching. I got some real defensive schemes that I'd like to try, some innovative stuff. And Bob said something really good. He said, "Why would you limit your influence to 15 kids? Go to the university and work with all the sports programs there, all the athletes and all the coaches, and go to that San Francisco community and get involved with that." And I did that, and I love it. I really do. And I can't say I miss coaching. I love coaching, and I'm running a coach's clinic in a few weeks. I still have my hands in youth basketball, but it just seemed like a natural phase to move on to that next level. And in retirement, I'd like to write, maybe start writing books and sort of leave something for others to maybe model through my experiences at Notre Dame or through coaching journals, etc.
All the adversity that you went through, the life lessons that you learned, is that stuff that helped make you a better coach, lessons that you could pass on to your players?
No question about it. I always told my team, you have to welcome adversity. You have to want adversity. It's really the takeoff to bigger and better things. With coaching, one of the things we did, we had never allowed our kids to argue with a referee. Never. They weren't allowed to question referee's call. We were going to be accountable. We weren't going to blame the officials for losses. We weren't going to blame anything other than our own performance. We were going to be realistic and look in the mirror after every game. We did an evaluation. How did we do in 3-pointers? How did we do in layups? What was our percentage of 3s to 2s? Rebounding? Every metric we looked at, and would then come up with a plan. How are we going to get better? Everything was based on March. Okay, here we are in November. What do we got to do to win in March? I had a pretty good feel as to who we had to beat in Northern California to get to the state final. And then I even looked beyond that and began preparation for that, even throughout the season. But every one of my players embraced adversity. We loved it. We thought it was definitely something that would make us better in the long run. So nowadays, we make excuses, right? Kids don't get good grades. Well, the teacher is wrong. You're not playing. Your coach doesn't like you. Well, Rick Majerus once said, we try to take disappointment, the heartbreak, and the failure out of our kids' lives, all the things that make them great. And I really believe in that. I think you have to go through some tough times to come out of it on the other side.
That being said, Coach, how much is your faith help you get through those times? Because that's one of the things we've also lost is because we don't have that grounding in religion anymore. They don't know how to deal with disappointment. How much throughout your entire life was that something you could fall back on?
Well, my mom and dad were daily communicants, so we always were raised with faith. We went to Catholic school. My father would drop us off at mass every day. I was a daily communicant, up through high school there. That was instilled in us. But I've always looked at Jesus as the perfect teammate, and I always look at, sometimes we feel sorry for ourselves. I say, well, you know what, if he could endure what he got, the criticism and not being embraced by all people, you have to understand that, we're all trying to model. I think it's our duty to model that life and deal with the adversity and even forgiveness. I always think one of the most profound things he did at the end was to forgive people, for they know not what they do. And so I do think the faith at the core of it always got you to look at the bigger picture, that, yeah, it'd have been great to be the starting quarterback and have that honor and adulation. But really, in the big picture, that stuff is fleeting. It comes and goes. What's after it? I'll tell you about Ara. Ara Parsegian, to me, he just was the greatest mentor, because I think the best teachers, they not only say the word, but they live the words, right? And so when you look at Ara, you probably know his story, that, his children, he had a horrible experience with his grandparents. My father called me one night and said, you have to watch 60 Minutes tonight. There's a great feature on your college coach. And I said, what do you do? He said, just watch it. So I watched it, and there's Ara talking about his grandson, who was on the playground and his coordination was off and he kept falling down, and something was really wrong with him. And they took him home that night and he couldn't keep his hand on the paper. And so they took him to various clinics, and finally at Columbia University, they diagnosed him with Niemann-Pick C syndrome. And they had to tell the family that it was a genetic disease. And so they had to test their grandchildren. And out of his grandchildren, 3 of them had that disease. It's a fatal disease. There's no cure for it. And it's an awful death. It really is a terrible, terrible disease. And so Ara left the broadcast booth, and he dedicated his life to finding a cure for this disease. And I went to a fundraiser in Berkeley, and when I saw Coach, I don't know why, maybe because I was a backup, we were always very close. I always loved him, admired him, and he liked me and always gave me opportunities I thought that I probably didn't deserve, because I think he did like me. And we kept in touch till he died. And so I walk in, he said, who are you sitting with? And I said, no. And he goes, come sit with me. And I had 15 minutes alone with him, and he was just typical Coach. He, Frank, your record at Concord de La Salle is quite impressive with your 89% winning percentage. And so I say, Coach, I can't model you, But he knew everything. I write poetry, a Christmas poem every year, and I'd see him, and he'd say, I'll never forget the poem you wrote in 2002, and he would describe it. He was unbelievable, right? So I'm at this event with him, and he's telling me about what happened. And he said, I can't save my grandchildren, but I dedicate my life that no family, no parents, no grandparents will ever have to go through what we're going through. And I said, kind of like adversity has the effect of eliciting talents which under prosperous conditions might have remained dormant. He lit up. He said, I taught somebody something. I said, Coach, if you only knew, everything I am really came from the core of him. But think about that. In the face of that kind of adversity, that would break people, right? When your grandchildren, I have 5 grandchildren, I can't even imagine to deal with 3 grandchildren that would go through this horrific experience. And yet here he was, positive and make a difference. And to me, the beauty of him, I wrote him a note when he passed. I don't know if you guys heard this from other players, but he didn't want anybody to come see him. But he did say, if you wanted to reach out, write him a note, write him a letter. And I wrote him a letter. And in my letter, I said to him that, I said, to talk about your wins and losses would truly be to diminish who you were. You're so much more than that, right? And you look at his experience at Notre Dame. I don't know exactly, so don't quote me, but I think it was 11 or 12 years he was at Notre Dame. He wasn't there very long. But his real greatness was from 55, whenever he retired, to 94, when he raised, millions and millions of dollars. And there was no labs in the country researching this disease. I think there was one researcher in the world. And now we have, 20 and 30 fully functioning labs and they've isolated the gene. They're on the way to the cure. So again, getting back to what we talked earlier about, like, was it important to be the Notre Dame quarterback, or was it important to go on and run camps and do this? And in ours, was it really important to win the games that he won and the national championships, or was it really important to go on and instill the things that he did in all of us, and to make a difference with families that years from now, when Coach, dead and gone, that people are going to have hope because of what Coach Parseghian gave them. So, unbelievable mentor, and we've all just tried our whole lives to strive to just be a little piece of that if we can.
What's your favorite memory of era, like at Notre Dame? Is there a favorite memory? Is there something, a game, something that like just stood out to you as like the proudest moment you had there?
And cool, 2 things. One, I used to do drills with him. So when I was a freshman, there were 9 quarterbacks, and I was number 9, as I said. And I used to do drills with Ara because we did things in pairs, and we ran the wishbone. We ran a little bit on there. We were on the wing tee. We also did some option out of it. And so we would do these pitch drills, and I would, run down the line pitching to him, and he would pitch to me. And that's how we got to be friendly with each other. We just did drills together. And one day he said to me, Olako, it's uncanny. You look like Theismann. You run like Theismann. You talk like Theismann, but you throw like Zenon Budzinski. Zenon Budzinski was the school photographer. So I didn't know that at the time. I had to research that. So I always remember that. And the other thing was, my sophomore year, I ran the prep team. And, you got beat up. I mean, you were going 3rd string and guys that, that really didn't have a lot of hope in playing. And I ran that prep team, and we went against the first team, and we were preparing for the Northwestern game. And, we lost like 45-14 in the scrimmage, but I threw a couple touchdown passes. But more important, I was leading, and I got kids to play hard and very inspired football. And I was running off the field, and he called me over, and he said, you're doing a great job. I love your energy and your enthusiasm. He said, I can't take you to Northwestern because we can only test 40, and we can only travel 44 guys. But if you can get a ride there, I'll have a uniform for you. So I end up taking a station wagon to Chicago and going in that locker room. And I walked in, and I saw my jersey, number 12 there. And I started crying. I walked out so the guys couldn't see me. Then I went and got a payphone. I told my father, I said, Dad, I'm on national TV. I'm going to be dressing today. I got my number 12, And I said, I'm going to stand near the coach so you'll see me. So watch the game on television. You're going to see me because I'll stand by the coach. Well, get to the end of the game, and we're blowing Northwestern out, and all of a sudden he bypasses the other quarterbacks and puts me in. And I remember saying to him, what should I run? I don't know our offense. I know Northwestern's offense, right? But I had no offense. I was the prep team quarterback. He said, just run the option. And I ran the option. I took us right down the field on a lengthy drive. He told us not to score. But then he moved me up. The next Monday I got moved up into the rotation. I was in the top 3 quarterbacks, and now my whole trajectory at Notre Dame changed. So I always remember him rewarding, something that he saw in me through that scrimmage. But I always feel blessed because I always feel like my teammates didn't have that kind of a relationship with him that I did, because he was real serious guy. There was no small talk. You wanted to carry, I used to do that too. I used to carry a notebook around, and anytime he wrote something, I would write it down because he didn't really deal with small talk. And yet, I had this relationship with him because being the number 2 quarterback, standing next to him at every game and charting everything and doing drills with him, I always treasured that relationship. I actually think I would rather have been the number 2 quarterback and had that relationship with him than to be a starter and maybe not have that relationship with him.
So we do a segment on the show called 50-50. I'm going to give you a 50% chance to get a trivia question right, okay?
Oh, boy.
I know, the pressure's on. 50-50 question about the movie Rudy. True or false? It was the first movie that Vince Vaughn got a credit in.
I'd say false.
No, it is true. He had a small role in it, but a pivotal role. He was one of the guys turning in the jerseys at the end. He was in several, but it was the first movie that he actually got a credit on.
Really?
But I got a backup question for you. So there's only 2 movies that have ever been shot at Notre Dame. Rudy, do you know what the second movie was that was shot at Notre Dame?
Well,
and you mentioned it during the interview.
Yeah.
You mentioned this person during the interview.
Knute Rockne, All-American?
Yes, Knute Rockne, All-American.
Yeah.
And we all know who played George Gipp, of course.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Mr. Future President Ronald Reagan.
So
anyway.
I'm going to take the first one I got wrong as adversity, and I'm going to learn. I'm going to brush up on my trivia.
Perfect. Perfect.
Hey, I have like 16 guys that we go back to Notre Dame every year, and part of our trip is to go to Knute Rockne's grave. They've moved it now to Notre Dame. Be easier for us, but because we're getting older and it's hard to navigate. We would go to his grave. My father used to be the ringleader. He went to Notre Dame till he was 91, and we would huddle around his grave. We would hold hands, and my father would say a prayer, and then I would play my harmonica, the Notre Dame fight song, and the alma mater. And we did this every year. And then when Ara, one of my teammates, one of the managers on the football team, he knows I really am into Ara. And he had recorded Coach Parsegian his last time in the locker room. And I have that recording and I play it. At his grave now. It's so cool to hear the emotion in him. I'm never going to forget you guys. It was the last game when we beat Alabama in the Orange Bowl. And ironically, you talked, Scott, earlier about always as a backup quarterback, what's the mindset, right, that you have of always being ready. My high school coach once said to me, you're going to get an opportunity. It might be in the last game of your career. And sure enough, it was the Orange Bowl against Alabama. They were number 1 in the country, and Tommy got hurt, and I went in, and I had to lead the team there. And I think I walked into the huddle. We had the ball like on our own 10-yard line. And I walked in the huddle, and Wayne Bullock, my dear friend, says to me, whatever you do, don't fumble. And I looked at him and I said, don't worry about me. You don't fumble, right? And I walked up to the line of scrimmage saying to myself, don't fumble, please don't fumble. But I made a great play in that game. Don Criqui made a huge fuss over it, the announcer. I went back to pass, and Drew was baiting me to throw, and I kind of pump faked, and I knew he was baiting me, and I took a sack. And Don Criqui went on about the cerebral quarterback from New Providence, New Jersey, having the experience to take a sack. And I look back and say probably my greatest contribution to Notre Dame football was getting sacked.
Hey, Coach, it's been a delight getting to know you. I've read a bunch of quotes from you, but the one I think sums you up the most is excellence doesn't take days off. You are a living example of that. We really appreciate you giving us your time. And, Notre Dame, I don't think quite has that mystique that people of your generation and maybe prior gave to us. And to go back and feel the leaves of the fall in South Bend, I can see it all. And it's because of guys like you and teams like you under Coach Ara that made Notre Dame what it was. So thank you so much for coming on our show today.
It's a pleasure. And to represent my teammates is really special, because I'll tell you, that was the most unique group of people. And I always say this, we were not the most amazingly talented, but I have never seen a more together team, a more loving team. And I got to tell you, 50 years later, we still are. I mean, we go to reunions, we love each other. And it's so funny that it doesn't matter if you were Tommy Clements or you were Frank Alacco, we all hold the same level of esteem, that we're really well respected. And it's just amazing. It didn't matter whether you were a starter, you're 4th string, that you contributed and you felt it, and your teammates made you feel that way, and Coach Parsegian made you feel that way.
Well, it comes across, that's for sure. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it, guys. Coach Frank Alacco, who was a part of that 1973 national championship team at Notre Dame. And you can just tell that there's a guy that just is grateful at every opportunity that that came his way, and even the ones that didn't, he turned them into something.
I'm
He
most
comes off
impressed.
as an extension of Era Parsegan.
Right.
That's how I took that. What Era said to him, he's taken on into his life and helped other kids by the lessons that he learned, which really is spectacular. Because his players will now take what they learned from him and pass it on to when they start coaching or they do other things. So the good message that he has given that he learned will pass on and hopefully make things better as generations go on.
Next up, let's talk a little boxing. This was the story, certainly of the back half of the 1974, and it was made longer, as we'll get to, because Muhammad Ali and George Foreman were not only fighting in Africa, in Zaire, but because of a cut that Foreman suffered, they were there for, what was it, 6.5 months? I mean, it got extended quite a long time, over a month. Originally scheduled to have taken place on the 25th of September, Foreman, in a training session, gets cut, has to get 11 stitches. I mean, that's not just a cut. That's not sucking on a pop-up tab.
That's getting hit hard.
That's getting drilled
that's
in a
getting
sparring
drilled
session.
Yeah.
So now the fight is going to take place October 30th, 5 weeks after the original date. One problem with pushing it back into late October, or one that they are anticipating, the rainy season, and that means possible monsoons. One local said much more rain at night in the beginning of the rainy season. Of course, keep in mind, this fight is going to start local time at 3 o'clock in the morning. So they're really worried about some heavy rains. I don't know if you've ever been in heavy rain, like even a monsoon. But Billy, Ali was great at entertaining the journalists and providing plenty of fodder during this elongated stay in Africa.
We need more people like that. It's the way he would speak. He had told them, he said that he was so fast that the night before, when he flipped off the switch on his wall, he was in bed before the room was dark. Yeah. And he said, indeed, if he told them that if it got any better, he'd be scared of himself. But I'm saying, we need that. I mean, you're out there, you're not doing a lot, and they loved him out there. They loved him. I didn't. What was the other thing? We've all heard of the Ali Namboumye.
Yeah.
That's you must kill him.
Right.
I never knew that.
I know, because it's so sing-song.
Yeah, it is.
They're like,
you must kill him. So if I was just walking down the street going, hey, Scott Namboumye, Scott, hey, see you for lunch.
Right.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. The Con Game That Got Rough. This one's a favorite of all three of ours. This is about Burt Reynolds as a star. He was just kind of becoming a star, and he was starring in what many say is the first big hit that was a sports movie. Mark, it was called
The Longest Yard.
Yeah.
I remember going to the movie theater and watching it. I think I went twice to see this movie. It was just such a great movie. Comedy.
Yeah. Yep.
It was fun. Had a lot of football players in it.
Yeah.
Some good actors in it too, and it was just an entertaining and fun film.
The football game of the movie takes up 40 minutes of the 2-hour film. Shooting the game occupied the movie company for 5 weeks, 6 days a week, and laid out several players, including old Viking Joe Kapp, with fairly serious injuries. There is one sequence in which Reynolds rolls out, cuts back, and dives over the line for a touchdown. The sequence was shot several times. Aldrich called me one night, says Al Reddy, the film's producer, and he said everything was going great except that Burt was going to be 3 inches shorter because he kept coming down right on the top of his helmet. So I bring that up because Al Reddy.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
he just died.
I know. I
saw that, and I thought of you because you're the one that told me about the Godfather movie that he had. That he did the Godfather. You did the documentary behind. No, what was
The
it?
Offer on
The
Paramount
Offer,
Plus. Great show.
I looked at that and I thought, wouldn't he be great to get for this episode or to talk to him? And it said he died in May.
Just died.
Yeah, and I just oh man.
He won an Oscar for producing The Godfather, which is what that show, The Offer, is about, a dramatization of the time.
That's it.
Starring Miles Teller. It's a really good
so
show.
good.
Yeah. He was offered to produce the sequel, Godfather 2, and he turned it down, which, looking back, seems crazy even now, but he turned it down because he was producing The Longest Yard,
Yeah.
and he I think had a writing credit for this as well. I'm not positive about that.
I just like how they had that former NFL guys
Yeah.
either on the
Yeah,
team
Nitschke.
or it's,
Well, yeah,
but I
Nitsch-
mean, the greatest name, Sonny Six Killer.
Yeah, Sonny
Who
Six-
was that guy? That's
Sonny-
like the best name in sports.
Sonny Six Killer was the starting quarterback at the University of Washington.
Okay.
And he got overshadowed by Jim Plunkett a bit, but he was a fantastic quarterback. He didn't have a long NFL career.
No, but I just love that name.
Right?
Yeah, well, he was Native
Just-
American.
just-
Yeah.
Yeah, he was Nitschke, obviously. He gets hit in
Yeah.
the balls many times.
Right.
They had some great football players, and they had great actors in it. Eddie Albert played
Yeah.
the
That's the
warden.
warden. That's
And,
right.
You know, he's always like from Green Acres.
Ed
you think
Lauder.
of the,
Right.
you know, not this mean
bad
warden.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Richard Keel, who was in the Bond films, who played Jaws in the
Oh
Bond.
yeah, that's what Richard Keel was in, because he was the one that
He broke his nose.
broke his effing nose. That's
Right,
right.
right.
Gosh, I loved him, man. I liked him in Happy Gilmore too.
Yeah. Burt Reynolds went to Florida State and started at halfback for a half dozen games. The next year he hurt his knee, and that was it for his football career. He turned to acting. The rest, as they say, is Hollywood history. He
And
became one of the biggest stars.
Wasn't he also
in
a
Hollywood.
stuntman as well?
Yeah.
The one, yeah,
He
because
did.
he talked about it.
He did TV. Well, he did a lot of his own stunts. He was on Gunsmoke for a couple years.
I loved him in Gator.
Yeah. But then, yeah, the movies.
movie.
I think
Deliverance.
Deliverance.
Gator,
really-
Deliverance,
He wasn't the
Smokey
lead in
and the
Deliverance.
Bandit. No, he wasn't. He
He
wasn't.
wasn't. He wasn't. But
John Voight was.
Right. But he breaks his leg in that. But he had the '70s was really the Burt Reynolds
Coming out,
decade.
yeah.
And I told you the story, I think, where he and Sally Field, when they were dating, came to go see Star Wars when I was the usher.
Oh, really?
The Africa in Westwood, and they came to a Saturday show, and for some reason, I don't know if they were let in early, were they the only people allowed to go to the performance, but they were just sitting in there by themselves. And so I had to go
So
walk
Mark
in and check.
went, sat,
Sat right next
between
to
them.
him. Yeah, right, yeah.
So
between them.
I walked in, I
Is he
checked,
taken?
I pretended like I was doing something else. I checked the side doors, and I'm staring at them. Bert's just looking at me with Sally like, who's this creepy guy?
How many people? Okay, hands raised. Was Mark wearing clothes, or was he?
Maybe that was the problem. If I had my usher outfit on,
We all
we
know,
wouldn't have
right?
had the staring.
He's
Reynolds says,
naked.
"I can see your nuts."
Naked, and he's like, guys want a red vine?
Oh, God.
All right.
Do. That's funny.
Well, let's move on from fictional football to some real college football. Penn State was undefeated in 1973, had Heisman Trophy winner John Cappelletti, but Cap is now in the NFL, and the Nittany Lions won't go undefeated this year. Navy shocked Joe Paterno's team. How about this for a final score? 7-6.
Yeah. Riveting.
Nothing gets
I hope it was
your
bad
blood flowing
weather.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. But USC, which had, or Arkansas, which had shocked SC the week before, and now what happened to them?
They come home, you figure they're going to be all pumped up and get another big win. No, they not only lose to Oklahoma State, they lose 26-7 to Oklahoma State.
Pitt beat Georgia Tech 27-17 thanks to Tony Dorsett. The freshman running back runs for 168 yards and 2 touchdowns. Iowa broke a 12-game losing skid by upsetting UCLA
That's
21-10.
Come
Mark,
on,
what the
man.
hell happened?
They're Bruins, buddy.
that-
Were you at that
that's-
game?
You know what? I absolutely do not remember that game. I have
Dick
no
Vermeil's gotta
recollection.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah, fire his sorry ass before he abandons you for the NFL.
Disgusting. Heirs of Judge Landis by Frank DeFord, a story about the commissioners of the NFL, NBA, NHL, and MLB, known as Pete Rozelle, Walter Kennedy, Clarence Campbell, and Bowie Kuhn. We'll start with Campbell, the commissioner of the NHL from 1946 to 1977. Was called the president and treasurer, but everyone now referred to him as the commissioner. There's no way anyone can train for this job. The next commissioner must be a lawyer, or he must have permanent counsel in his office. You're like a judge setting precedents. It is essential to make clear rulings, according to Campbell. So, doesn't sound like the funnest job when you put it that way.
No, but are any commissioners? I mean, maybe I don't know. It's Not easy, man.
No.
You're hated by, no matter what decision you make, there's a group of people that hate you.
Yes.
And Gary Bettman has never been cheered one day in his life. When he comes out to give the Stanley Cup or the Hart Trophy, never once is he cheered. It's always boo.
Yeah.
Never. Same with Roger Goodell at the draft. Bring it on.
Yeah.
But isn't one of hockey's conferences the Campbell
Yeah, the
Conference?
Clarence Campbell. That's right. That's right.
It's because of him.
In the NFL, the commissioner is Pete Rozelle. He was commissioner from 1960 to 1989. He's only 33 years old when he took the job, and the NFL headquarters were located in a suburb of Philadelphia called Bala Cynwyd. He moved the league to New York when they had just 4 employees and got some flack about moving it from Bala Cynwyd. Could you imagine if the NFL headquarters were still in? I mean, it'd just be outside of Philly, but that'd be so strange.
Bala Cynwyd sounds like we're Muhammad Ali and them.
Right, exactly.
Go to
Yes.
Bala Cynwyd. I don't know if my accent helped there.
Yeah,
Right.
You'd think everyone's office would be in New York.
Yep.
Now, for some reason,
Oh, here we go.
Mark's phone is ringing.
Ringing. That must be TWA.
I think it's
Yes. Oh, yeah. We got our stuff.
They're offering us $1 million.
Yeah.
No, they're offering us 1,000,000 miles.
Exactly. Fly
You can
anywhere
fly
you want.
anywhere on TWA.
That's right. That's right.
All right.
I want to go to
Go.
Duluth. When's your next flight?
Now that is perfect.
But
TWA.
Frank DeFord did basically 4 articles on one each on each commissioner, and he ended each excerpt with this question: what did they prefer to wear when they were sleeping?
That makes boy.
And surprisingly, a good portion of
3
them,
of them.
are like Mark.
Yeah. They want to be naked.
They don't sleep with anything on, which is,
Great minds
is
think alike.
fine, I guess,
Yeah.
until the 2 a.m. bathroom
Yes.
run, and your kids have friends over or
Yep.
something, and all of a sudden, well, that ain't a Bowie
That's-
tune. So
I've
very
seen
strange.
more Bowie than I need.
Roselle said, sometimes I do sleep in the nude, but, with all these new kids around the house, I'm usually at least in my bottoms. Mostly my pajama bottoms, I would say. I don't know.
Would you have ever, at any time, whatever person you interviewed, and you were doing a feature, Mark Scott, would you have ever asked that question? So, Mr. Poitier, how do you sleep at night? Well, balls out, Bob. I mean, what would you do? I mean,
That was my first question to Reggie Jackson in the.
Yeah, is
Well,
that why he
obviously.
grabbed you?
yeah.
Very, very strange. Anyway, he kept it up. NBA Commissioner Walter Kennedy took the job in 1963. He held it until May of 75. He said, in the future, I think commissioners are going to be superseded by the courts of law, hence what Campbell
Yes,
said.
yes.
In the last 4 years, 25 to 30% of my time has been spent on litigation, while in the beginning, weeks would go by without anything like that coming up. Kennedy had infantile paralysis and always walked with a limp. I've always been a early to bedder, 11:30. I sleep in my pajamas most of the year, but in the summer when it's hot, Mark, he sleeps.
Nude.
Did Walter
Okay,
Kennedy
we're
was
2
Wal-
for 2. He died just a couple years later.
Okay.
In 1977, his eulogy was given by Howard Cosell.
Wow,
Who knew?
that is cool.
1969, Bowie Kuhn was named the 5th commissioner of Major League Baseball. He would hold that spot until 1984. Huge changes in the game took place during his tenure, none bigger than free agency.
DH.
Yeah, probably close. But in terms of, you could still have the game be similar to what it was without the DH,
Yeah.
but free agency just changed the whole tenor of sports.
Well,
really.
I liked also, Kuhn said, I visited the FCC to talk to the congressmen and senators about things like the threat that legalized gambling poses to team sports. Mind you, 50 years ago, but now gambling's the
Oh, gosh.
As the fuel.
massive
The
money
more
maker.
the merrier.
Mr. Kuhn, what do you think of fantasy baseball, huh?
I wonder
more
what
the
he was
merrier.
doing. No, Mark, what do you think he would have said about that? Would he
Well,
have been for it? Or?
he'd be like, "What? What is it?"
Yeah.
They'd say, "Look, it's going to be a billion-dollar industry, multi-billion-dollar industry."
But
We
those
can get a cut.
those numbers seem, back then, that would be
He would
mind-blowing.
have been probably uncomfortable with the fact that there was money attached to it.
Yes.
They didn't want ever that for it to be seen as if
Improper.
baseball was anything but the up and up. And The job hasn't worn me down any more than if I was a lawyer. I certainly don't think it has changed me. Well, the kids have had to get used to other kids saying, why did your dad do this or why did your dad do that? He did not take kindly to the what do you sleep in.
He did not like Mark.
He said, Mark, it's none of your business. And Mark was like, well, I just want to see what you're going to be wearing when I come over.
I'll be wearing.
I'll be streaking.
He was elected to the Hall of Fame in 2008, 1 year after he died. So I remember hating Bowie Kuhn.
So, I mean, with me, that's when
Now,
I first came into it.
He
Yeah.
just came across as boring.
He
Well, in 1981, I mean, you're a kid and you
Yeah.
blame someone for the strike. And
yep,
so,
yep.
that was, he was the
He was the
commissioner
face. He was the face.
when baseball's first
He-
big strike that I remember.
He always came across as being really old to me. But that was the commissioner when I first started doing baseball.
Me
That's
too.
the commissioner
too.
I remember.
Yes. Yep. And from him to Ubroth was such a change.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Ubroth was young and dynamic,
Yep.
and then from Ubroth to Giamatti.
Which wasn't long.
No, not
And then
at all.
Faye Vincent.
Yep.
Yeah.
More baseball. Let's talk a little ball here. Billy, what you got?
Just Gaylord Perry of the Indians. He won 20 games, and now he said, I won 20 games wet and 20 games dry because Perry was known for the
Spitball.
There you go.
Yeah. Yep. Mark?
I got the San Francisco Giants, who, man, could pack them in back
Yes.
then in the 74 season. For their game against the Atlanta Braves, the Giants drew 748 people for the game. I repeat, 748.
And keep in mind, that's Hank Aaron.
That's right.
And
Yeah,
you never
that's
know.
right.
Like, it could have been his last season. He ended up playing 2 more, but you never know. He just broken the record.
They
That's
barely.
just, that's
they-
just crazy.
Yeah, they barely had 500,000 that year for the entire season for
Right.
attendance.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to stay afloat that way. But I mean, 748, that brings, new meaning to the phrase, good seats still available.
Oh, for
Well,
sure.
I went to a Padres game back in the 90s when they gutted their team. I mean, there had to be as maybe that much or a little more, a little less. There was no one there.
Right.
I sat in one section behind first base, and it was me. And I remember a guy was over here, and there was 2 girls up top. There was no one there. You could literally
Yeah,
hear everyone.
it's funny because if you're around, if you had, I mean, like if we had 748 people in this office setting, it'd be like, oh my gosh,
it's
it's
so
packed.
packed.
Yes.
But when you have 750 people in a place that holds 60,000,
Oh my God, it's
it's just bizarro. Fred Lynn was called up from Pawtucket at the end of the season, hit .550 for the week while driving in 8 runs for the Bo Sox. He would come up full time the next year and win Rookie of the Year and MVP. That's a pretty good beginning. While the Brewers had 4 RBIs from their rookie outfielder, Stormin Gorman Thomas.
God, that Gorman Thomas was just
Right.
such a dynamic player. But there was a time he was the young guy being called up.
Yeah.
But about Fred Lynn, nicest man ever.
Yeah.
I went to an autograph show many years ago, and I met him. He was the nicest. He went through my sporting news with me. I have like 4 of them, and he goes, "That one's not worth." He goes, "This one right here is the one I would sign for." He goes, "That's the one that would be the most if you sell it." He was just the nicest
Oh, good.
man.
Good. I'm hoping we can have him in our future at some
Yeah.
point. Yeah. For the record, Mark, what do you got?
For the record, the retirement of a basketball legend for New York Knicks fans, Willis Reed. He was only 32 years old. He had just a debilitating condition with his right knee. It was operated on twice, but who can ever forget 1970 NBA Finals, Game 7, Lakers and Knicks. And Willis Reed, no one thought he could play with that knee, and all of a sudden he comes hobbling onto the court and led the Knicks to an easy Game 7 win over the Lakers.
But I wish people should look that Willis Reed video up. It really is. Even
Yeah,
nowadays, it's spine tingling because here was a guy that probably shouldn't have been walking, much less walking onto a court.
Right, and he averaged less than 19 points
Yeah.
and just under 13 rebounds
Yeah.
a game. But it was just that game, and he was like sort of the team captain.
Well,
And-
the funny thing about that is actually he only played like 6 or 8
Yeah,
minutes in that game.
he did. It was more-
really just
the team just
to
got
come out and just because I think he finished with like 4 points
Yeah, I
or
think I was
something.
gonna say that, yeah.
But it was the emotional boost
Yes.
that he gave that was what the Knicks needed to win their championship. I think they won one more. They won 73 as well, I think. Billy, you got something?
I got 2. One is Martina Navratilova. She was 17 years old from Czechoslovakia. She upset Julie Heldman in straight sets to win $50,000 Barnett Bank Classic. Obviously, Martina went on to bigger things than that and was obviously one of the greatest women tennis players in the world. And then James Wren Zach Taylor died. You guys ever heard of him?
Nope.
He was the manager of the St. Louis Browns under owner Bill Veeck. Taylor was managing the team when the late Eddie Goodell of Midget was signed to the club and made an appearance as a pinch hitter. So he was the manager at that time. Now, oh wow, Eddie Goodell, what was he, 4'11"?
If that.
If that, yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, not even.
Yeah.
3 feet tall.
That was
Saying, yeah, and that's Bill Veeck saying, we're signing him, you're putting him in.
Yeah,
You know.
sure.
So,
Yeah. Hey, he walked.
that was
He
what
did.
year again? That was 1940.
Something in 1951.
And that was the Tigers he was facing.
Was it
St.
really?
Louis Browns. I think
Did
it was
you
the
see
same.
the game?
Which is weird because they would
Say
have
this,
walked
man.
him anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nowadays, why don't you just drill him?
Faces in the crowd. I don't think anything jumped out at us this week, but I got 19th hole, and I'm going to go real fast here. But Linda Goodson from Arkansas, Robert Cundiff from Kentucky, and Mrs. B. Gladding from Milwaukee.
Oh, B.
None of them happy, disgusting, disappointed. If we wanted a picture of some stupid woman being handled by some equally stupid men, we would have subscribed to an altogether different type of magazine. They're talking about the naked lady at the Evil
Yeah.
Knievel
Oh, that's
thing.
right.
That's right.
And they were not happy about seeing this
It was
young
an
gal.
odd picture to put
It
in
was
there.
very
Do you
strange.
think it just got past
Very strange.
the proofreaders? They
It
didn't
must
notice
have.
it?
It
Because
must
I can't
have.
imagine, because back then there was a lot tougher laws on obscenity. And,
Yeah, there were.
And I can't imagine that if they'd seen it, they would have put that picture in there.
Well, you're
Or they
seeing the
blurred it
guy
out.
trying to pull her bottoms off too. So it was in all ways wrong. So I'm very surprised it made it.
And I just want to appeal for the people that are paying the Kelseys $160 million and some of these other podcasts. We'll work for half that price.
Oh, quarter.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You know, so
Yes.
Pennies on the dollar.
Yep.
Yes, and I've watched the Super Bowl. I mean, I maybe haven't played in one,
Right.
but I've watched them.
Yes.
I met Mark Rippon. I mean, that's
There you
what
go.
somewhere.
What else do you need?
Exactly.
Next week, October is upon us, and we'll talk baseball. Catfish Hunter on the cover. Can't wait to talk about my Oakland A's. But until then, for Bill, for Mark, I'm Scott, and we are Past Our Prime.